Mean HOA lady Karen takes a heart monitor off a sick 8-year-old girl and throws it in the trash. She says the girl is faking her illness. But Karen doesn't know the girl's father is the county sheriff who will make her regret what she did to his daughter. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching, also like and subscribe for more stories. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Meadowbrook Gardens as I pulled into my driveway, still wearing my county sheriff's uniform. My radio crackled softly on my belt, another routine day keeping our community safe. But the moment I stepped out of my patrol car, I knew something was terribly wrong. My 8-year-old daughter Emma sat on our front porch steps, her small body shaking with sobs. Her chest looked bare, wrong. The heart monitor that had been strapped to her since her surgery 3 months ago was missing. "Baby, what happened?" I dropped to my knees beside her, my heart hammering against my ribs. Emma had been born with a severe congenital heart defect. That monitor was not a toy or an accessory. It was her lifeline, constantly tracking her heart rhythm and alerting us to any dangerous irregularities that could kill her within minutes. She took it, Daddy," Emma choked out between sobs, her face red and wet with tears. "Mrs. Patterson took my monitor." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean she took it?" "I was playing with chalk on the sidewalk," Emma whispered, her voice small and broken. "Mrs. Patterson came over and started yelling that I was making the neighborhood look messy. I tried to explain I would clean it up, but she wouldn't listen. Then she saw my monitor and said I was wearing fake medical equipment for attention, and that kids like me shouldn't pretend to be sick." My hands clenched into fists. Karen Patterson was our HOA president, a woman who had made the past year a living nightmare with her petty complaints and ridiculous rules. But this crossed every line imaginable. She grabbed it off me, Daddy. She pulled so hard the straps hurt my skin. Emma lifted her shirt slightly, revealing red marks across her ribs where the monitor had been forcefully removed. She said she was going to throw it in the trash because it was medical garbage and didn't belong in our pristine community. Something dark and dangerous stirred in my chest. As a law enforcement officer, I had seen terrible things: violence, cruelty, injustice. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had ever made me feel this level of pure, white-hot rage. This woman had put my daughter's life in immediate danger. Where did she go, Emma? Her house. She said she was going to report us to the HOA board for medical fraud and get us fined. Emma's whole body trembled. Daddy, I need my monitor. What if my heart does the bad thing again? The bad thing was ventricular tachycardia, a life-threatening irregular heartbeat that had nearly killed Emma twice before her surgery. Without that monitor, we would have no warning if it happened again. I pulled out my phone and called my wife, Sarah, who was at work at the hospital. Honey, I need you to come home right now. It's Emma. Karen Patterson took her heart monitor. The silence on the other end lasted only a second before Sarah's voice came through, sharp with fear. She what? I'm going to handle this. But Emma needs you here with her. Call Dr. Morrison and tell him what happened. We need to know how dangerous this is. I hung up and looked at my daughter's tear-stained face. Baby, I need you to go inside and wait for Mommy. I'm going to get your monitor back. Don't be mean to her, Daddy, Emma said, her voice so innocent it broke my heart. Even after what had happened, my sweet girl was worried about me being unkind to her tormentor. I won't be mean, sweetheart. But I will make sure this never happens again. I promise you. I walked across the perfectly manicured lawn that separated our properties, a lawn that Karen had once measured with a ruler to ensure the grass was exactly 2 inches tall as per HOA regulations. My footsteps felt heavy, each one echoing with barely controlled fury. The Patterson house was a monument to superficial perfection. Every shrub trimmed to geometric precision. Every flower arranged by color gradient. A home that cared more about appearances than humanity. I rang the doorbell. Once. Twice. On the third ring, Karen Patterson opened the door, her face already twisted into its signature expression of disdain. "Oh, it's you," she said, looking me up and down with barely concealed contempt. "If you're here about your daughter's little tantrum, I suggest you teach her some respect for community standards. The chalk marks she left on the sidewalk were. Where is it?" My voice came out low and controlled, but there was steel beneath every word. "Excuse me?" Karen's eyebrows rose in mock surprise. "My daughter's heart monitor. The medical device you ripped off her body. Where is it?" Karen actually had the audacity to laugh, a sharp, cruel sound that made my jaw clench. "Oh, that ridiculous contraption. I've already disposed of it. Honestly, the theatrics you people engage in for attention is absurd. I've seen your daughter running around playing. There's nothing wrong with her heart. You're probably one of those parents who fake medical conditions for sympathy and special treatment." The world seemed to narrow to a pinpoint. Every sound became distant. All I could see was this woman's smug face, all I could hear was her dismissive tone about my daughter's life-threatening condition. "You disposed of it," I repeated slowly. "Yes. In the dumpster behind the community center where it belongs. That fake medical device was an eyesore, and frankly, I'm tired of your family's constant disregard for community aesthetics. Your daughter's condition," she actually made air quotes, "doesn't give her special privileges to clutter up our neighborhood with medical garbage." "Karen." I took a deep breath, trying to maintain my professional composure. "That heart monitor costs $8,000. More importantly, it's a prescribed medical device that tracks my daughter's heart rhythm after her open-heart surgery. Without it, if she has another arrhythmic episode, she could die before we even know something is wrong." For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed Karen's face. "Open-heart surgery? The child is 8 years old. Don't be ridiculous." I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo, Emma in the hospital bed 2 days after her surgery, her small chest covered in bandages, tubes and wires everywhere, her skin pale as paper. 3 months ago. They had to repair a ventricular septal defect and correct an abnormal valve. She almost died on the operating table twice. That monitor is her safety net while she recovers. The color drained from Karen's face, but her expression quickly hardened again. "Well, how was I supposed to know that? You people never communicate anything with the HOA. If you had proper documentation." "Documentation?" My voice rose slightly. "You need documentation before you assault a child and steal medical equipment. Is that really the defense you're going with?" "I didn't assault anyone. I simply removed what I thought was a toy. Your daughter was being dramatic about it, as children do. Show me where you put it. Right now." Karen crossed her arms. "I don't appreciate your tone, Mr. Martinez. Just because you're a sheriff doesn't mean you can bully HOA board members. I have rights too, you know. And technically, your daughter was in violation of HOA Code 47.3, which states, I don't give a damn about HOA Code 47.3. The words exploded out of me. My daughter's heart monitor is not an HOA issue. It's a medical necessity. Now you have two choices: you can take me to where you put that monitor right now, or I can arrest you for theft of medical equipment, child endangerment, and assault of a minor. Your choice. Make it fast." Karen's face went through several shades of red and white. She knew I wasn't bluffing. Finally, with visible reluctance, she grabbed her keys. "Fine. But I'm filing a complaint about your aggressive behavior with the county board." "You do that," I said coldly. We walked to the community center dumpster in tense silence. Karen pointed to a large garbage bin with obvious disgust. "I threw it in there about 20 minutes ago." 20 minutes. 20 minutes my daughter had been without her monitor. 20 minutes where a fatal cardiac event could have occurred without warning. I climbed into the dumpster, not caring about my uniform or my dignity. I dug through garbage bags, food waste, and other trash, my hands getting filthy. After what felt like an eternity, I found it, Emma's monitor, tangled in coffee grounds and other refuse. I climbed out, holding the device carefully. It was covered in garbage, and the screen was dark. "Please work," I prayed silently. "Please still work." "There. You have your toy back," Karen said dismissively. "Now can we discuss the real issue, which is your daughter's chalk vandalism?" I turned to look at her, and whatever she saw in my face made her take a step back. "Karen Patterson," I said officially, my voice shifting into the tone I used for arrests. "I'm not arresting you right now, though I legally could. But I am going to make something very clear to you. What you did today constitutes several serious crimes. Theft of medical equipment. Child endangerment. Assault of a minor. Possibly attempted manslaughter if my daughter had suffered a cardiac event in the time this monitor was missing. That's ridiculous. I didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't bother to ask. You saw a child with medical equipment and decided, in your infinite wisdom, that you knew better than her doctors. You physically removed a device from a child's body against her will. That's assault, Karen. Clear and simple. I want to speak to your supervisor, Karen demanded, her voice shaking now. By all means. I'll give you the number myself. But here's what's going to happen first. You're going to pay for this monitor to be professionally cleaned and inspected. If it's damaged, you're buying a new one, $8,000. You're also going to write a formal apology to my daughter. And you're going to resign from the HOA board. I will do no such thing. I've been HOA president for 6 years. This community needs my leadership. This community needs a lot of things, I said quietly. Your leadership isn't one of them. You have 48 hours to resign. If you don't, I'll be filing formal charges. And trust me, once the media hears about an HOA president who ripped medical equipment off a child with a heart condition, your reputation will be destroyed anyway. At least this way you can leave with some dignity. I returned home to find Sarah had arrived. She was holding Emma, both of them crying. The moment Emma saw the monitor in my hands, she scrambled out of her mother's arms and ran to me. You got it back. Daddy, you got it back. Sarah took the monitor from me, her hands trembling as she inspected it. It's filthy, but it looks intact. I'll clean it and we'll have Dr. Morrison check it tomorrow. For tonight, Emma stays with me every second. I'll monitor her manually. Sarah was a cardiac nurse. If anyone could keep Emma safe tonight, it was her. But the fear in her eyes mirrored my own. That evening, after Emma was asleep, Sarah and I sat together in the darkness of our living room. What if her heart had? Sarah couldn't finish the sentence. It didn't, I said firmly, pulling her close. Emma's okay. This time. But that woman, Daniel, she could have killed our daughter. Over chalk marks. Over community aesthetics. Sarah's voice broke. What kind of person does that? The kind of person who values rules more than people, I said bitterly. The kind who thinks being right is more important than being human. Did you really tell her to resign? I did. And if she doesn't, I'll make sure everyone knows what she did. The local news, social media, every platform I can find. People need to know that the woman running their HOA is willing to endanger children's lives to enforce arbitrary rules. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. You know she'll fight back. Karen doesn't give up power easily. Let her fight. I'm not backing down on this. The next 48 hours were tense. Dr. Morrison confirmed that Emma's monitor was still functional, though it needed recalibration. The marks on Emma's ribs would heal. Physically, she would be fine. Emotionally was another story. Emma became quiet and withdrawn. She refused to play outside. She flinched when she heard Karen's voice from next door. My bright, happy daughter had been traumatized by someone who should have been a trusted adult in our community. On the morning of the third day, I received a certified letter. Karen had not resigned. Instead, she had filed complaints against me with the county sheriff's office, the HOA board, and apparently everyone else she could think of. The letter from the HOA was particularly infuriating. Dear Mr. Martinez, it has come to our attention that your daughter engaged in vandalism of community property, chalk on sidewalk, and that you have been harassing HOA President Karen Patterson with threats and verbal abuse. Furthermore, your daughter's medical equipment violates HOA Aesthetic Guidelines Code 47.3 regarding visible medical devices in public spaces. We are fining you $500 for the chalk incident and requiring documentation proving your daughter's medical necessity for the heart monitor. Please provide this documentation within 30 days or face additional fines. I stared at the letter in disbelief. They were actually fining us. They were actually demanding medical documentation. They were treating my daughter's life-saving equipment as an aesthetic problem. Sarah read the letter over my shoulder, and I felt her body go rigid with rage. They want proof that Emma needs her heart monitor. They want us to prove our daughter's surgery was real. This is Karen's doing, I said. She's turning the whole board against us. Then we fight back, Sarah said, her voice cold with determination. We fight back with everything we have. I made a decision that night. If Karen wanted a war, she would get one. But it wouldn't be fought in the shadows with petty complaints and legal loopholes. It would be fought in the light, where everyone could see exactly what kind of person she was. I started by talking to our neighbors, people I had served and protected as county sheriff. I told them what had happened to Emma. I showed them the photos of her surgery, the red marks on her ribs, the monitor covered in garbage. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Mrs. Chen, whose husband I had helped during a medical emergency 2 years ago, was horrified. That woman took your daughter's heart monitor. Oh my God, Daniel. Emma could have died. The Johnsons, a young couple with twins, were equally outraged. Karen fined us 3 times last year for our kids' toys being visible from the street. We thought she was just strict, but this is evil. Mr. Abdul, a retired teacher who lived 3 houses down, actually had tears in his eyes. I've lived in this neighborhood for 30 years. I've watched it change from a community to a prison. Karen Patterson has turned our HOA into a dictatorship. What she did to Emma is just the worst example of her cruelty. One by one, my neighbors came forward with their own stories of Karen's tyranny. The Williams family had been fined $1,000 for painting their front door blue instead of the HOA-approved beige. Mrs. Rodriguez had been threatened with legal action because her garden gnome was 3.2 inches taller than permitted decorative items. The Parkers had almost lost their home when Karen tried to force them into foreclosure over $47 in unpaid HOA dues from a missed invoice. Every story was a testament to Karen's obsession with control and her complete lack of human compassion. But Emma's story was different. Emma's story involved actual physical harm to a child. That made it something people couldn't ignore. I called for an emergency HOA meeting. As county sheriff, I had enough influence to make it happen. Every homeowner in Meadowbrook Gardens received a notice. The meeting was scheduled for the community center, the same building behind which Karen had thrown Emma's monitor in the trash. On the night of the meeting, over 200 people showed up. The community center had never been so full. Karen sat at the head table with her usual board members, looking confident and composed. She didn't realize what was coming. I stood up when it was time for community comments. Good evening, everyone. My name is Daniel Martinez. Most of you know me as your county sheriff. Tonight, I'm here as a father. The room went completely silent. I pulled out my phone and projected photos onto the screen behind the board, Emma in her hospital bed after surgery, tubes and wires everywhere. Emma's heart monitor diagram showing the complex medical device that tracked her vital signs. The red marks on her ribs where the monitor had been forcefully removed. The monitor itself, covered in garbage. 3 days ago, my 8-year-old daughter Emma was playing with chalk on our sidewalk. She has a severe heart condition and recently underwent open-heart surgery. She wears a prescribed medical monitor that tracks her heart rhythm and alerts us to potentially fatal irregularities. I could see Karen shifting uncomfortably in her seat. HOA President Karen Patterson approached my daughter and accused her of faking her medical condition for attention. She then physically removed Emma's heart monitor from her body, leaving marks on her skin. She threw this $8,000 medical device in the garbage. She told my daughter that her fake medical equipment didn't belong in our pristine community. Gasps echoed through the room. People turned to stare at Karen, whose face had gone pale. For 20 minutes, my daughter was without the monitor that could save her life if her heart went into an irregular rhythm. 20 minutes where a fatal cardiac event could have occurred without warning. I paused, letting that sink in. Today, I received a letter from the HOA board. Instead of apologizing, instead of taking action against the board member who endangered my child, they fined me $500 for Emma's chalk marks. They also demanded medical documentation proving my daughter's surgery was real, essentially asking me to prove my 8-year-old daughter's heart condition isn't fake. The room erupted. People started shouting at the board. I could see anger on every face. I'm not here for sympathy, I continued. I'm here because what happened to Emma represents everything wrong with how this HOA has been run. Rules have become more important than people. Aesthetics have become more important than safety. Power has corrupted the very purpose of a homeowners association, which should be to create a safe, welcoming community, not a dictatorship where children's lives don't matter. I looked directly at Karen. I'm calling for an immediate vote of no confidence in the current HOA board, specifically Karen Patterson. And I'm proposing new leadership that actually cares about the people in this community, not just the color of their front doors. Karen stood up, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment. This is a smear campaign. Mr. Martinez is using his position as sheriff to bully me and manipulate this community. Yes, I made a mistake, but I didn't know about his daughter's condition. He's blowing this completely out of proportion. Mrs. Chen stood up from the audience. You didn't know because you didn't ask. You saw a child with medical equipment and decided you knew better than her doctors. Mr. Abdul rose next. Karen, you've been fining people and threatening them for years. You've made this neighborhood miserable. What you did to Emma was just the final straw. One by one, people stood up and shared their stories. The room became a chorus of complaints about Karen's leadership, her arbitrary fines, her cruel enforcement of trivial rules, her complete lack of compassion or common sense. Karen tried to defend herself, but her voice was drowned out. Finally, one of the other board members, a man named Tom Hendricks who had always seemed uncomfortable with Karen's methods, stood up. I move for an immediate vote of no confidence in Karen Patterson as HOA president. Seconded, said another board member. The vote was called. Out of 200 homeowners present, 197 voted for Karen's removal. Only 3 voted against, Karen herself and 2 of her closest allies. It was the most lopsided vote in the HOA's history. Karen stood there, stunned, as the reality sank in. She had lost everything, her position, her power, her reputation. This isn't over, she said, her voice shaking. I'll sue. I'll take this to court. You can't just. Actually, we can, Tom Hendricks said calmly. The HOA bylaws allow for removal of board members by majority vote. This vote was legal and binding. You're no longer president, Karen. It's time to go. Karen gathered her things with trembling hands and walked out of the community center. The silence that followed her departure was profound. Tom approached me after the meeting. Daniel, I'm sorry. I should have stood up to her years ago. I knew her methods were wrong, but I convinced myself it was just about maintaining property values. What she did to Emma. I'll never forgive myself for not stopping her sooner. You stopped her now, I said. That's what matters. The next morning, I filed formal charges against Karen Patterson with the district attorney's office, child endangerment, theft of medical equipment, and assault of a minor. The DA, an old colleague, took one look at the evidence and photographs and immediately agreed to prosecute. This is one of the most clear-cut cases I've ever seen, he told me. She physically removed medical equipment from a child with a documented heart condition. There's no defense for that. The story made local news within days. HOA president removed heart monitor from child, faces criminal charges. The headline spread across social media. Within a week, it had gone national. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of people shared Emma's story. Support poured in from across the country. Other families with children who had medical conditions reached out, sharing their own stories of discrimination and ignorance. But the most important response came from within our own community. Meadowbrook Gardens underwent a transformation. The new HOA board, led by Tom Hendricks, immediately rescinded all of Karen's most absurd rules. The chalk drawings on sidewalks were not only allowed but encouraged. Children's toys in yards were welcomed as signs of life and joy. The strict aesthetic guidelines were relaxed to allow for individual expression and character. Most importantly, the board passed a new rule: medical equipment, mobility devices, and health-related modifications are exempt from all HOA regulations. The health and safety of residents, especially children, takes absolute priority over aesthetic concerns. They called it Emma's Law. Karen's trial came 3 months later. I sat in the courtroom with Sarah and Emma. My daughter was wearing her heart monitor, cleaned, recalibrated, and functioning perfectly. She held my hand tightly as the prosecutor presented the case. The evidence was damning. Photos of Emma after surgery. Medical records documenting her heart condition. The monitor itself, shown covered in garbage. Testimony from Dr. Morrison about how dangerous it was for Emma to be without the device. And Emma's own testimony, delivered in a small but steady voice, about how scared she had been when Mrs. Patterson took her monitor. Karen's lawyer tried to argue that it was all a misunderstanding, that Karen hadn't known about Emma's condition, that she had thought the monitor was a toy. But the prosecutor destroyed that defense with one simple question: Mrs. Patterson, when you saw what you thought was a toy strapped to a child's chest with medical-grade straps, did you at any point think to ask the child what it was before you removed it? Karen had no answer. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. The judge looked at Karen with open disgust. Mrs. Patterson, you held a position of authority in your community. You were supposed to help create a safe environment for families. Instead, you endangered a child's life because you valued arbitrary rules over human compassion. Your actions were not just neglectful, they were willfully harmful. You saw a child with medical equipment and decided, without any medical knowledge or authority, that you knew better than her doctors and parents. The judge sentenced Karen to 6 months in jail, 2 years of probation, 500 hours of community service with a children's hospital, mandatory anger management and empathy training, and full restitution for all costs related to Emma's monitor. More importantly, the judge issued a restraining order. Karen was to have no contact with Emma or our family for 5 years. As Karen was led away, she looked at us one final time. There was no remorse in her eyes, only anger and bitterness. She still didn't understand what she had done wrong. She still saw herself as the victim. But I didn't care about Karen anymore. My focus was on Emma. 6 months after the trial, our neighborhood had become something truly special. The changes went far beyond just relaxed rules. Tom Hendricks and the new board had transformed the HOA from an enforcement agency into an actual community organization. They started family game nights in the community center. They organized block parties where kids could run freely and play without fear of fines. They created a community garden where residents could grow vegetables together. Most touching of all, they commissioned a mural on the community center wall, designed by the neighborhood children. Emma's contribution was a large heart with a rainbow coming out of it, and the words, "A community with heart." Emma herself had blossomed. The trauma of what Karen had done hadn't disappeared, but it had faded. With therapy and support, my daughter was laughing again, playing again, living again. Her heart was healing both physically and emotionally. One afternoon, I found Emma in the front yard, drawing elaborate chalk masterpieces on the sidewalk with a group of other neighborhood kids. They had covered nearly half the block with colorful dragons, flowers, and rainbow patterns. Mrs. Chen came by with lemonade for the kids. She smiled at me. Can you imagine? 6 months ago, this would have gotten us all fined. Now it's just kids being kids. This is what a neighborhood should be. Sarah came out to join me, and we watched Emma laugh with her friends. The monitor was still strapped to her chest, visible under her light summer dress. But now other kids asked about it with curiosity instead of judgment. Emma explained it proudly, teaching them about her heart and her surgery. "She's going to be okay," Sarah said softly, taking my hand. "She's going to be more than okay," I replied. "She's going to be extraordinary." A year after everything had happened, I was invited to speak at a national HOA convention about the importance of putting people over rules. Emma came with me. When it was her turn to speak, my 8-year-old daughter walked up to the microphone with her head held high. "My name is Emma Martinez," she said in a clear voice. "I have a heart condition, and I wear this monitor to keep me safe. Last year, someone told me I was faking being sick. She said my monitor didn't belong in our community. She hurt me and threw my monitor in the trash." The room was absolutely silent. But my daddy and my neighbors didn't let her win. They changed our whole community to make it better. Not just for me, but for everyone. Because communities should care about people, not just rules. Emma held up a photo, the community center mural with her rainbow heart. "This is what my neighborhood looks like now. Everyone is happy. Kids can play. People can be themselves. We still have rules, but the rules help us instead of hurting us." She looked out at the hundreds of HOA board members in the audience. "I hope your communities can be like this too. I hope you remember that people are more important than perfect lawns. That kids being happy is better than kids being quiet. That helping each other is what neighbors are supposed to do." The applause that followed was thunderous. Grown adults wiped tears from their eyes. Several board members came up to us afterward, promising to change their own HOA policies. Emma's story had sparked a movement. Across the country, HOAs began adopting Emma's Law, exempting medical equipment and devices from aesthetic regulations. Others went further, completely restructuring their rules to prioritize community well-being over enforcement. It wasn't perfect. There were still countless HOAs run by people like Karen. But change had begun, started by one little girl's courage and one community's decision to choose compassion over conformity. 3 years have passed since that terrible day. Emma is 11 now, thriving in 6th grade. Her heart has healed well enough that she only needs to wear the monitor during sleep. She plays soccer, takes art classes, and has become an advocate for children with medical conditions. Karen served her time and moved away from Meadowbrook Gardens. I heard she tried to join another HOA board in a different town, but her background check revealed her criminal record. Some things, it seems, have consequences that last. Our neighborhood continues to flourish. Property values actually increased after Karen left. Turns out people prefer to live in warm, welcoming communities rather than perfectly manicured prisons. But the most important change is harder to measure. It's in the way neighbors greet each other with genuine warmth instead of suspicion. It's in the sound of children's laughter echoing through streets that used to be silent. It's in the community garden where Mrs. Rodriguez's gnome, now proudly displayed, watches over tomatoes and peppers growing in cheerful chaos. Every year on the anniversary of Emma's Law passing, we have a neighborhood celebration. Kids cover the sidewalks with chalk art. Families share food and stories. And in the center of it all, Emma's mural reminds us of what we fought for, a community with heart. One evening, as I tucked Emma into bed, she looked up at me with those wise eyes that had seen too much pain for one so young. "Daddy, do you think Mrs. Patterson ever understood why what she did was wrong?" I thought about it carefully. "I don't know, baby. Some people never learn. But that's not your burden to carry." "I don't hate her anymore," Emma said softly. "I feel sad for her. She must be very lonely, caring more about rules than people." I kissed my daughter's forehead, my heart swelling with pride. Despite everything she had been through, Emma had somehow emerged with her compassion intact. She had every reason to be bitter, to be angry, to be broken. Instead, she chose empathy. "You have the biggest heart, Emma," I whispered. "And I don't just mean because of your surgery." She smiled sleepily. "A community with heart, remember? Always, baby. Always." As I left her room, I paused to look back at my daughter, peaceful and safe, her monitor humming softly with each steady heartbeat. That sound, once a symbol of fear and fragility, had become a lullaby of hope. In the end, Karen had tried to break us. Instead, she had shown us exactly what we needed to become. She had tried to enforce rules that divided us. Instead, she had united us in a common cause. She had tried to throw away a child's lifeline. Instead, she had become the catalyst for a community finding its heart. And somewhere in that story, in the pain and the struggle and the ultimate triumph, was the greatest lesson of all, that cruelty can be defeated not with more cruelty, but with courage, compassion, and a community that chooses to stand together. Emma's law wasn't just about medical equipment. It was about remembering that behind every rule, every regulation, every policy, there are real people with real lives and real hearts that beat with the same hopes and fears we all share. It was about choosing humanity over bureaucracy, compassion over conformity, love over law. It was about being a community with heart. And in our little neighborhood in Meadowbrook Gardens, that's exactly what we had become.